him out. 2 balls and a strike to count on Taylor. Reyes fires, swing and a drive, deep left field. It's his way back. Walk the ball. Chris Taylor.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into DodgerHeads Live, presented by DodgerBlue.com, part of the Blue Wire Podcast Network. 3-person show tonight. My name is Jeff Spiegel, joined today by AJ Gonzalez, Blake Williams, both of DodgerBlue.com, here to break down all the latest news. We're going to talk about the Dodgers and a little bit of a skid they're in. We're going to do injury updates. And then, of course, 48 hours away from the trade deadline, we're going to do a ton of trade deadline talk, guys. But let's just talk, pause, take a pulse of the moment. The Dodgers 2 games up in the National League West, but Blake, they've lost 5 of their last 7. Not exactly playing inspired baseball here as we head into the trade deadline. I guess the Kike Hernandez trade didn't move the needle.
Yeah, not too much. I think it's the thing we've seen a lot with this team this year. When their offense gets hot, they're going to win a lot of games. And when they start to cool off, they don't really have the depth to kind of carry them to a lot of wins like they have in previous years. So it's kind of an up and down season from that perspective. Like they're going to play 900 ball or they're going to play 400 ball. And it doesn't seem like there's a whole lot of in between. And yes, you mentioned like Kike isn't really a game changer, even though we love him. He's been a negative WAR player this year, and it's just not the kind of guy that's going to move the needle much.
Well, I mean, we have to give some credit to Graham Ashcraft. Oh, no, never mind. We don't have to give any credit to Graham Ashcraft. He's terrible, and he shut out the Dodgers today. AJ, they are 2 games up in the division, though. Like, is there still room for some optimism, or is a week like this kind of put a dent in how you're feeling about this team?
I don't like to compare to the competition most of the time because it doesn't spell out positive results for playoffs. Like, sure, you're 2 games up on the Diamondbacks, who may have been overperforming a little bit early in the season. I don't want to take anything away from them because they're a solid team. But you go up against a team like Atlanta in the playoffs with the way this Dodger team is performing, and you don't want to see that right now. So it's not a ton of optimism right now, especially because, there's little tiny injuries that granted should wash off within the next few days, like JD and Mookie. But like Blake said, when their big hitters aren't hitting, when, between Mookie and Freeman and a little bit of like Smith, Martinez, if those guys aren't in the lineup and aren't hitting, this team isn't scoring any runs.
Yeah, 3 of those guys were out of today's game by the 4th inning. Mookie Betts and JD Martinez both missed the game with an injury, and then Will Smith left a little bit early as well. So here's the plan for today. I do want to talk about those injuries because that feels like kind of the most current piece of this thing. And then, of course, we will get into the trades. We're going to go back and sort of hindsight, look back at the trades the Dodgers have made already. I know I was not here to share my thoughts on the Lance Lynn, Joe Kelly's trade. You guys were both not here to share thoughts on any of the trades so far. So that'll be a good one for us all to chime in on that one. We'll talk a little bit about the rumors. Nolan Arenado, is that trade dead? Justin Verlander seems to be the hot name. Mitch Keller of the Pirates, another name as well. And then we'll talk sort of ripple effect. Where does the rotation, where do the bullpen stand as we currently are here today? But let's talk injury updates, Blake. Tons of little bits of news of injury to get to. Let's start with Clayton Kershaw. There was hope, maybe even optimism that he might be ready this upcoming weekend to return, but it was announced today that he's due for another simulated game on Thursday. I believe he's going to pitch 4 innings, and then the week after that is the earliest he could be back. So that's a series against the Diamondbacks, I believe, but not available this weekend against the Padres. Blake, we've talked on here before about the Dodgers and injury updates. I mean, this late in the game, like, do we feel like we can believe what the Dodgers are telling us about Kershaw? He seems positive. Like, are you confident that 10 days from now we're going to see Clayton Kershaw pitching for the Dodgers?
I think this time I'm a little more confident than I have been previously, just because he is pitching. He pitched an extra inning that he was supposed to the other day, and next he's scheduled to throw, as you said, 4 innings or whatever. So there's progress being made. It's not just like he keeps getting pushed back because he's not throwing or anything. It's just he needs to build back up. So I guess I'm a little more hopeful there, but as you said, it's just kind of a running joke with the Dodgers and their injury updates. They're just never accurate. But this is also the 3rd or 4th time they've changed his timeline. So maybe this is the time they're actually correct on it.
Yeah. Hey, at some point they've got to be right. AJ, on the offensive side, today was not a good day for the Dodgers. Mookie Betts missed his second consecutive game with right ankle soreness. He's listed as day-to-day. There is an off day tomorrow as we record this on Sunday night. So hopeful that he will be back on Tuesday. You had JD Martinez, who got scratched just before his first AB, ends up being serious enough that he had to go get an MRI on his hamstring. Roberts said that he couldn't swing a bat or run at any point today. There was video of him sort of limping around in the dugout. And then for the cherry on top, Will Smith leaves the game early with what is being called a left elbow contusion that resulted from a hit by pitch in the first inning. Stayed in the game initially. It was a day game. He had played the 2 nights before. They were getting killed. That one, Dave Roberts says, not expected to be serious. So Mookie and Will Smith, it sounds like, AJ, the expectation is they'll be back on Tuesday. JD Martinez having to go get an MRI feels like an IL stint coming to me.
Yeah, me too. It's concerning for the offense. It's concerning when a guy whose only job is to hit and run the bases constantly has problems with their hamstring. I know that it's not as simple as this, but it does make me ask the question, are the strength and conditioning coaches just like getting some lunch? Or is JD, is it his age? Is it the years? Is it the mileage? Before this season, that was sort of the concern with JD, whether he'd have his bat speed back and whether he'd just have it from previously in his career after the odd year that he had last year. I'm not going to beat the dead horse for too long, but Justin Turner has played in 100 games and his Ops Plus is only a few ticks down from JD's. Just saying. Wow. But it is concerning because he mashes lefties especially, although this year he's mashed pretty much both sides of the plate fairly well. And yeah, if Freeman and Mookie are not in the lineup, or if they're having down weeks, which they're allowed to have, it doesn't matter that they're superstars. They can't hit all the time. And no JD in the lineup, it's a question mark because this team has to score runs to win right now.
Yeah, well, that's a new one, Blake. I haven't heard the Justin Turner coming for JD Martinez, but he must have been hot the last 4 to 6 weeks because, as you point out, the weighted runs created plus only a few ticks off for Justin Turner, who I guess at least technically offers you some defensive value that JD Martinez does not. Blake, I'll ask you, is Michael Busch designated hitter season upon us?
I'd hope so, but I think the Dodgers don't think Michael Busch is actually a real person. They just kind of have him in the minor leagues, just putting up a 1,000 OPS, and he's just not real. Like, he's a simulated person, according to the Dodgers, and we may never see him. But to be real, they absolutely should call him up, and they should have called him up for quite some time. He's done everything he can at the AAA level. He's got nothing else to prove.
Yeah. 2 home runs today. I think the first one got knocked down, but at first it was reported as like a 475-foot home run to dead center. I think it came down to 450 something, but still 2 home runs. He hits lefties. He hits righties. Look, if you're worried about the defense, if it truly is a 10-day IL stint for JD Martinez or 15-day IL, this would be the perfect opportunity to give Michael Busch the runway that everybody has been asking. As you said, Blake, they send him down, he hits. It's not like Gavin Stone or some of these other prospects who get sent down and continue to sputter a little bit. Michael Busch continues to hit. So are you in the same boat, Blake? Do you sense that, reading the tea leaves here, we're all guessing, but that JD Martinez needing to get an MRI might be reason to believe that this is headed for an IL stint?
Yeah, probably. I mean, I don't think there's any other way of really looking at it unless he comes back with a great MRI and he's totally good to go, but it just doesn't seem to be going that way. So yeah, probably.
Okay, the last update here real quick is on Julio Urias. Nothing to be too worried about here, at least not maybe as worried as you should be about his performance on the field. Cracked fingernail, ends up getting his start pushed back till Thursday, so maybe a little bit of extra time between starts for Julio will do him some good, help him reset some things, work on some things. But those are the injury updates. Again, Clayton Kershaw expected back hopefully in the next 10 days or so. Will Smith, Mookie Betts expected back Tuesday, it sounds like. Julio Urias expected to make his start Thursday, a couple days behind schedule. And then JD Martinez is the one to watch. There's no report. It was serious enough to need an MRI. It was serious enough he couldn't run or even swing a bat today. So take that for what it's worth. Let's get to the trades because that's what everybody's here to talk about. And everybody here is excited or maybe preparing themselves to be disappointed about. But let's talk about the trades that the Dodgers have made already. 3 trades in the books for the Dodgers. We'll go in reverse order here. And we'll start with what I would say is the biggest one, acquiring Lance Lynn and Dodgers legend Joe Kelly in exchange for Jordan Leisure, who's a reliever at AA, Trace Thompson, and then the big prize, Nick Nastrini, who MLB Pipeline had as the number 9 prospect on the Dodgers midseason list. Blake, I'll start with you. I think I know how you feel, but give me a grade on this one. A, B, C, D, F. Where are we going? Lance Lynn and Joe Kelly coming over.
I'm probably at like a D on it, and I feel like that's being kind of generous. Giving up Nastrini for 2 guys with bad contracts who have not been playing well isn't ideal. My only hope is that Lynn was really popular among teams, so maybe there's something they can kind of fix there. And I guess at worst, he's going to eat innings, but he's basically been pitching like Noah Syndergaard for most of the year and just more innings. So like, if they don't fix him, you gave up a prospect that a lot of people love a lot with his high strikeout stuff as a potential mid-rotation starter in the future for a guy that's not very good. And I like the Joe Kelly part of it, but he's a reliever, and I don't love paying for relievers to begin with from prospects or cost-wise. So it's just, I don't know. It's kind of confusing giving up Nastrini for those 2 guys.
Yeah, AJ, some lots of D's here. We got Brian with a B-. I will say the Syndergaard comp from an ERA perspective is fair. At least Lance Lynn is striking a whole lot of people out. 74th percentile in strikeout rate, 83rd percentile in whiff rate. So some of the underlying metrics are at least there's some encouraging stuff. Like the FIP, the expected ERA isn't great, but it's 2 runs lower than his actual ERA. So again, nobody's arguing Lance Lynn is going to be a Cy Young pitcher from here on out. But I think the Thor comp is maybe a tad bit unfair would be my pushback. AJ, are you in the D category like everybody else? How do you feel about this trade?
Yeah, it's a D if you're grading on a curve compared to other teams. If you're great, the last few years, Andrew Friedman and company are like that cliche like female character in like bad rom-coms. Like, I just think I can fix him, and I don't know that the Mark Pryor lab can fix that level of bad.
Yeah.
I was a big proponent of going after Lance Lynn like a year ago, and with the 2023 he's had, it's bewildering because, like Blake was saying, Nastrini was a high guy for a lot of people in the organization, and not even just getting a guy who's struggling a little bit, because I understand the Dodgers are historically good at that. Syndergaard aside, at taking guys and fixing what their problem was. But literally, we're talking about the worst ERA in the league and the most home runs given up in Lance Lynn. So that is a big gamble to give up prospects like that, hoping you can fix a guy who's been not just bad, but the worst.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I hope I have to eat my words on that. I really do, but I don't. I'm with Blake. It's kind of a bewildering move.
I'll zag a little bit. I've got a B- on this one, and it's mostly related to what you said, AJ, because we're grading on a curve here and just the cost and the desperate need for starting pitching. The Dodgers needed not 1, but 2 starting pitchers, and at least one of those 2 had to be somebody that could just get you innings every 5 days, and that's what Lance Lynn is. If it's 6 innings and 4 earned runs every 5th day, that's going to be fine. That doesn't work out to a super great ERA, but that's going to keep the Dodgers in games. It's going to keep their bullpen alive. And again, there are at least some underlying metrics with Lynn, the strikeouts, the whiff rate, that are somewhat encouraging. You could look at, he had a really great start a couple weeks ago, and there were people saying, hey, maybe he figured some things out. Pretty sure he got shelled in his last time out. But I just think Lance Lynn offers the Dodgers value. And look, for all the negative Michael Grove comments that I see in the chat, like Lance Lynn is who's taking Michael Grove's spot in the rotation for the time being. And so the Dodgers needed somebody who could just eat innings, and that's what Lance Lynn's going to do. As far as Joe Kelly, I'm not the craziest in the world on Joe Kelly. I tweeted out, like, my thoughts are summarized as this: Lance Lynn is an upgrade over bullpen game, and Joe Kelly is an upgrade over Phil Bickford. I believe those two things. And so I think the Dodgers got better. Do I think the cost was high? Yes. But I think Nastrini, I mean, the other two guys they gave up, I'm not really worried about. I don't think either of you are talking like they do. It's Nastrini here. The Dodgers have depth in starting pitching prospects. They dealt from that depth. I'm guessing they chose the guy they liked the least of their AA rotation, and he was the one who sent out. He's got command issues, which is sort of a concern. We've seen that pop up with some of the guys they've called up already. So I don't love that Nastrini is the piece that feels expensive, but we're going to get into some of these other trades. I mean, the Angels gave up a top 50 guy for Lucas Giolito. Lucas Giolito is much better than Lance Lynn, but I'm not sure the gap between Nastrini and a top 50 prospect for Lance Lynn versus Giolito. I don't know. I just think Lance Lynn provides them value in the short term and keeps them alive. Blake, I see that you're not enjoying anything that I'm saying right now, so I'll give you a chance to respond.
I mean, if I'm trying to win a World Series, I'm giving up the better prospect to get a good player than giving up a really good prospect to get Lance Lynn.
So would you have given up Gavin Stone for Giolito?
Probably not, but
I mean, there you go. That's a top 50 prospect for Giolito.
But that goes back to kind of my point about this team to begin with. Like, I don't think they should have been aggressive buyers because they kind of tanked this year to begin with. They didn't really spend or do much in the offseason, and now you're forced to fix the multiple holes this team has with overpays. So I just don't love that strategy. I rather would have seen the assets used in a better spot, like go get Mitch Keller or someone like that, where at least you're getting more long-term value than giving up a prospect that a lot of people like for Lance Lynn.
Would you have given up Michael Busch for Lucas Giolito?
I would have considered that just because how the Dodgers have like treated him, I guess. They don't see him as part of their future. Whereas Gavin Stone, like their outlook on their long-term rotation's kind of shaky. So I wouldn't be giving up close to major league ready starters necessarily for guys who are rentals.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and look, this is the thing. I think, and AJ, I'll let you chime in here in a second because I know you're saying, hey, I would have given up Gavin Stone. I would have given up Michael Busch. I just think that's the tricky part is it's really easy to say yes to a lot of these trades until there are names involved. But it's reasonable to believe that maybe the Dodgers looked at their double A rotation, River Ryan, the other guys that are down there and said, hey, this is the guy that we have the least confidence is going to figure it out. There is reliever risk with him because of his command issues. Obviously, there's upside as well. The Dodgers have a deep farm system, but this is the guy they chose to give up. And for me, I wouldn't have given up Gavin Stone for 3 months of Lucas Giolito because we're talking about, I mean, there's 60 games left. So we're talking about 10 starts between for these pitchers, like giving up an extended amount of time for somebody you have real hope and belief in versus a guy that is maybe more of a lottery ticket, which it feels like Nastrini was more of a lottery ticket guy than a Gavin Stone or Michael Busch type is where I'm at. So AJ, I'll let you chime in and then we can pile on to the Rosario and Kike trades here.
I didn't have a lot. I would say if I was Andrew Friedman of our major league ready-ish pitching prospects that we've seen pitch this year, for a guy like Giolito, I would have considered giving up one because I like Blake's point that in some ways the Dodgers punted this season, but in a 5-game series as well, but in a 7-game series, like weird things happen. 111 win juggernaut teams with virtually no holes lose to the Padres in 22. And I know that mathematically it doesn't shake out, but mediocre to good teams like the Dodgers in 23, weirder things have happened. And just adding one arm to the rotation for that run is sometimes worth trading out of your depth.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say that for sure I would have done it, but I think I would have considered it.
Yeah. And I would say too, like one caveat for me, at least on all of these, is I'm not really going to put a grade on this trade in pen until August 2nd at 3:01 p.m. or whatever time the trade deadline is, when all the moves settle. Because if the Dodgers do go out and get a guy like Mitch Keller, then I think this trade in context will make a little bit more sense, because I don't think any of us would be mad if Lance Lynn is the second best starting pitcher that the Dodgers end up with here. I think he's still going to provide value. And Blake would still be mad apparently, but I think he still provides value. Like everybody wants to crap on Lance Lynn, and then you also want to crap on Michael Grove, and you also want to crap on Tony Gonsolin, and you also want to crap on Julio Urias. Like at some point, somebody has to take the ball every fifth day, and I would at least prefer that to be somebody who can get me 6 innings and has the upside of swing and miss stuff. That and again, nobody is here. Like the thing I hate about sometimes these arguments is like, if I say it's a B-, everyone's like, oh, Jeff loves Lance Lynn, big Lance Lynn guy, thinks he's going to win the Cy Young. It's like, no, I'm looking at Lance Lynn compared to a bullpen game. I'm looking at Lance Lynn compared to what we saw from Michael Grove today, which was 1 2/3, and Dave Roberts looking at him and saying, hey, bud, you're wearing it today. Like we're just packing this one in and waving the white flag. And so I think the Dodgers need, I mean, even look at Emmett Sheehan. He was pitching great the other day. The Dodgers didn't trust him to go past the 5th inning, which is fine in context. But if the guy who's pitching the next day is only going to get you 3 innings or 4 innings, it's going to kill your bullpen, which is distressing another piece of the team that I think is even worse. So there we go. And look, this is the beauty of sports is we're all going to see what happens. Like if Lance Lynn pitches as bad as Noah Syndergaard did, then I'm going to be wrong on this one. If Lance Lynn can throw like a average 6 innings per start and have an ERA between 4.5 and 5, then I think I'm going to be right on here. And Joe Kelly, I mean, who the hell knows what we're going to get from Joe Kelly? Let's move on to the next straight here.
Wait, real quick. Can we get someone to clip Jeff saying Jeff loves Lance Lynn? Like,
yeah, exactly.
That's coming back to that.
Moreno's, I guarantee you, Moreno's already on it. He's still got the one that says Andrew Friedman sucks. He's got that one clipped. It's like Moreno loves clipping that kind of thing. So
of course he is. That's his burner.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's go. We got it.
All right, done. Ahmed Rosario, and Noah Syndergaard. Let's all get on the same page. I think we can all unite around this one. This is an A. They got something of value for Noah Syndergaard. Rosario is not amazing. He's not like the perfect player. He crushes lefties. They claim they may have turned him into a second baseman already. I don't care about any of that. He hits lefties, and they got him for Noah Syndergaard. This is an A for me. Blake, are you going to disagree here?
No, I was going to say A+ actually.
Okay, beautiful.
Because Rosario is a pretty solid player. He hasn't been amazing this year, but he still hit lefties well. And just getting something usable for Noah Syndergaard is a win. Like, I don't think anyone could really be mad about this, even if Rosario doesn't perform. It's the same cost that Noah Syndergaard was taking. But I feel pretty confident saying Rosario is going to perform at least enough to justify giving up Noah Syndergaard for him. And he'll probably improve the lineup versus lefties, which is an area they struggled. So you basically gave up nothing to get a player who can help you. And that's an amazing win.
Yeah. AJ, I'm going to press pause real quick because I want to apologize to Michael, who did leave a super chat a couple minutes ago, and we haven't gotten to it yet. So let me pause and get to that. As we're talking about all these trades, he said Lorenzen, Erod, Sewald, and Topa, go get them now. I don't think anybody would disagree with this. Rodriguez is a guy that the Dodgers have been connected to. I believe it was the LA Times that said that the Dodgers had viewed him explored him as a trade option. Lorenzen was a guy that Fabian Ardaya mentioned with me when he was on our show earlier. That seemed like an interesting one, kind of out of the blue a little bit, that I was like, oh, that's interesting that Fabian Ardaya mentioned his name. So look, those two guys, starting pitchers, obviously some value there. So AJ, I mean, like this is what we're talking about, right? Is like if the Dodgers are serious about wanting to win, going after a Lorenzen or a Rodriguez, starting with those two, I think would be guys that are worth pursuing.
Yeah, I don't know how much I can add to that. I'm all for it at this point because if the Dodgers are going to make a run, they need arms. They need reinforcements in that. I'm not even going to say beleaguered starting pitching staff in that, like, it's beat to death. They just need help. Yeah.
Blake, I mean, is there a guy, Lorenzen or Rodriguez? Do you like one of those guys more than you like the other?
I think I like Rodriguez more because he's been pretty good in the past. My concern with him is he's kind of feasted on the AL Central this year. Like if you compare his numbers in the AL Central versus everywhere else, it's a pretty big difference. And if he opts into his contract, I'm not sure the Dodgers would love to have that for the next, I think it's 4 years or something like that.
Yeah.
So I have some concerns with him there. I wouldn't be mad if they got him or even Lorenzen for that matter. I'm just not fully sure they're as good as we've seen from them this year.
And then as far as Sewald and Topa goes, a couple relievers that the Mariners currently have. Blake, do you still view the bullpen as a position that the Dodgers need to be aggressive and get, like, if they don't add another reliever between now and Tuesday, will you be disappointed?
They could use an arm just because the state of the bullpen's always kind of up in the air. I wouldn't necessarily say disappointed because I think they have the talent to have a quality bullpen. It's just they've had a lot of inconsistencies in the bullpen this year.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't hurt to add someone, but I think just by improving the starting rotation, you're going to make the bullpen better just kind of by default there.
Yeah.
So I still think adding at least one more starter is their biggest need. And I wouldn't be mad if they added 2 more starters, but that's probably pushing it in something they're not going to do.
Yeah, and that's been my stance all along is if you add starters, then all of a sudden, like you add Lance Lynn, well, now Michael Grove moves to the bullpen, and say what you want, as bad as he was today, his whiff rate was like 38% or something. He had 10 strikeouts today. So there's definitely some tools there where if deployed in the right situations, a guy like Grove could be an effective reliever. And then you could say the same with Bobby Miller, Emmett Sheehan, the guys that gets pushed down out of the rotation. But AJ, we almost got Blake to say that he wanted to trade for a relief pitcher, which I think would have gone against like every fiber of his being. He was so close to saying he wanted to give up something of value for a reliever. So,
I was pushing for the JP Fireeisen trade in the offseason. I like taking flyers on relievers, not trading
well,
assets
I wouldn't
for
be bragging about that trade right now. Like that one hasn't worked out super hot for the Dodgers.
But he's got some team control. It's a long-term move.
Yeah, exactly. AJ, what about you quickly on the bullpen? Do you think the Dodgers need to go out and get another arm? I can read you. I mean, currently they've got Phillips, Gratterall, Ferguson, Almonte, Brazier, Kelly, Vesia.
I'm looking at the list. That's why my face is frowning.
Yeah. So that's 7. And then you've got whatever starting pitchers fall out of the rotation. So Grove, Miller, Sheehan, whoever. Like if 2 of those guys drop out, then you've basically got 9 guys for 8 spots out of the names that I just mentioned.
I don't like trading for bullpen arms.
Yeah.
As a general rule. And we have a few guys in that bullpen who I would confidently say roll the dice on. As everyone knows, it's a cliche. Bullpen, especially in playoffs, tends to be kind of a roll of the dice.
Yeah.
But you have guys who have had success. Obviously, we've got Phillips, who's been terrific. I know Brusdar Graterol can be heart attack inducing with the contact that he allows, but his results are still pretty good. Other than his most recent outing, Almonte was starting to find it.
Yeah.
And like you said, if you move a guy like Grove into the bullpen, there's your long guy. And like you said, he got, I think it was 10 Ks today.
Yeah.
Amidst all the damage. I don't think you give up prospects, especially like really good ones, for bullpen arms. That's just kind of the general rule that I've always felt should be followed. The only way you give those up is for starting pitching.
Yeah. Yeah.
Roll the dice with the bullpen we've got.
Yeah.
You got to acquire starters and then move Gonsolin and Julio to the bullpen.
Here we go. We're going to get there.
Problems.
Like, just take a deep breath. All right. With your move all these guys to relief pitcher.
Worked
just
out
take
in
a
the
deep breath. Yeah. AJ, real quick, circling back to the Ahmed Rosario trade. A for me, A+ for Blake, A+ for you. Where are you at?
Oh, I mean, yeah, it violates the laws of physics to get something out of nothing.
Yeah.
And Friedman did that.
Yeah. And they were going to have to pay Syndergaard no matter what. So, it kind of, things work themselves out. All right. Last trade here was Kike Hernandez coming, Nick Robertson, and another minor league reliever going out. AJ, I'll come to you on this one first. I like the Rosario trade. I like Rosario. Let me put it this way. I like Rosario way better than I like Kike. Because Rosario, you don't really have to project the hitting of lefties. Like he has done that every single year, including this year. I joked the other day on Friday's show. The Dodgers are facing a lefty Friday night. Of all the Dodgers, the guy who had the best chance of getting a hit, according to Las Vegas, was Ahmed Rosario. It was not Mookie Betts. It was not Freddie Freeman. It was not Will Smith. So that just goes to show you how he hits against lefties, over 300 batting average against them. So I wasn't as high on Kike Hernandez. He's graded out really bad defensively at shortstop this year. He's been really bad offensively this year as well. But the return was basically nothing. Nick Robertson was a 40-man roster spot they probably needed to open anyway. So Give me a grade quickly on this one. Kike Hernandez for Nick Robertson.
C+.
Okay.
I too, like, yeah, Kike's been of negative value, especially this year. He hasn't hit as well against lefties as normally he would. That's kind of always been his draw, especially for the Dodgers. But he is a good clubhouse guy. I think he does play pretty good defense at other positions if we can use him there, especially as things start to go wild and we need to shift them around. And I know that I'm going to get tomatoes thrown at me for this, but in the playoffs, Kike performs. He historically has for us. Not every time, but he hasn't given us a 2019 AJ Pollock in the playoffs. And I don't forget stuff like that. And I think he's worth taking a flyer on as far as the roster, the malleability that he gives and what he could possibly provide in those clutch moments, given his experience.
Yeah, it's a B for me for all the reasons you said. I like that he's flexible defensively. I don't think they gave anything up. It's a dart throw, but it was a really inexpensive one. And it's a guy that, A, as you said, has at least been in big moments, so you're not worried about that. And B, you know what he does fitting into the clubhouse. So there you go. Blake, what do you give this grade?
I'm probably at a C to a C+ also.
Okay.
Kind of on the fence of it. Like, I do feel like it was an overpay value-wise, even though I don't think it's going to hurt the Dodgers long term. I still think you have to consider the value of every trade when you're grading it. So it was probably an overpay there, but he is a solid player, I think, even though he's been one of the worst players in the league this year, defensively and offensively. I think he's better than what he's shown, but it really is just a dart throw. So, like, I don't love it. I don't hate it. I'm kind of just on the fence of it. We'll see. Hopefully he proves us wrong. As AJ said, he is really good in the postseason. I think he has like a 900 OPS in the postseason. So it's a solid trade. It's not going to move the needle. It's not going to hurt them. So just, it is what it is.
Okay. Well, Scott wasn't here to sit on the fence, so I appreciate you taking one for the team and just sitting right down the middle on that one. It's much appreciated. Scott's with us in spirit now as we approach that. Let's talk real quick because we've kind of referenced it. I do think it's worth pointing out kind of what other trades have been made around the league because I do think it puts some of the Dodger moves in context. So let me list off what I would say are the 5 other sort of trades that maybe the Dodgers could have potentially been interested in or involved in, and then you guys tell me if there's one of these that in hindsight, you would have said, hey, I wish the Dodgers would have made that trade with the cost being what it was. So Jordan Montgomery and Chris Stratton went to Texas for the Rangers' number 11 and number 14 prospects. The Rangers had one of the better systems in the league. So I don't know the scouting report on all these prospects, but the Rangers had a good system. It was their 11th and 14th best. So take that with a grain of salt. Again, Nick Nastrini, for context, was the Dodgers' 9th best prospect. Jordan Hicks went to Toronto for their number 7 prospect. Max Scherzer went to Texas for a top 50 prospect, as I said. David Robertson went to Miami for their number 18 and 21 prospects. And then Lucas Giolito and Reynaldo Lopez went to the Angels for their number 2 and number 3 prospects as well. And the Angels one, as I've said, is kind of some guys had the catcher that they traded away as a top 50-ish prospect. So do with what you will. But Blake, I'll start with you. Montgomery and Stratton to Texas, Hicks to Toronto, Scherzer to Texas, Robertson to Miami, Giolito and Lopez to the Angels. If you could have picked one of those for the Dodgers, which would it have been?
It's probably the Montgomery one, but I also would have considered the Robertson trade. I think both of those were really good. And I'd say the cost for Montgomery was probably like Nastrini and some other mid to lower tier guy behind him. So like if you're telling me you could get Stratton and Montgomery or Lynn and Kelly, like I'm taking Montgomery all day with that same kind of value.
Yeah.
And that's also why I'm like more against the Lance Lynn trade, even if he is solid, because that just feels like a huge overpay on Lynn there. So I like that Montgomery trade a lot. And then I also think the David Robertson trade was really good because he's a closer who's been having a really good year and the Dodgers could have used someone like that. So if you're kind of just picking between all those trades, those two I'm definitely making. I would have made those in the Rosario trade and been happy with this trade deadline, but they ended up overpaying for some other guys, and that's where we're at now.
Yeah, I had actually the same thought on Montgomery. I wondered if they had shopped Nick Nastrini in a trade similar to that one, and maybe gotten some pushback for one reason or another. That was the one that jumped out to me as well. Not my favorite, but I thought the same thing. AJ, are you in the same boat? Is that Montgomery trade the one that you would have made if you could choose?
100%.
Yeah.
And since we're talking about gauging the cost of trading around the league, are we going to address the potential elephant of the room of the Dodger tax?
Yeah.
Because if that Montgomery trade was available in a similar package from the Dodgers, there's no way Andrew Friedman, unless he's under some kind of heavy influence of anesthetic, doesn't make that trade.
Yeah.
Like, maybe I'm jumping at shadows here, but there's just something the last few years, other than the Scherzer Trey Turner trade, where I think we gave up a fair amount, where the Dodgers gave up a fair amount. It feels kind of odd, especially that we will win for Lance, for Lynn and Kelly for what we gave up in Nastrini and the other guys.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's fair. I mean, Blake, do you think that the Dodgers get taxed? I mean, part of this is we're saying, hey, the number 7 and 9 prospect. Well, the number 7 prospect is not equal in all systems. Do you think the Dodgers kind of get? I mean, this is the Cardinals. Maybe there was some bad blood over the Arenado thing. We're going to get to that in a second. Maybe they didn't want to trade within the National League. I don't know what any of this is, but do you buy that?
Somewhat. I feel like because the Dodgers system is so deep, teams are going to ask for like the more talented guys, and then even when they end up settling for someone who's not as ranked highly, like it's still a better prospect than most teams have. So when you're kind of settling there, it's still going to feel like an overpay. But then on the other hand, like every team grades out prospects differently and views them differently. So like what the media has and what each team has are all completely different things.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's totally fair to say like the Dodgers are giving up this much more instead of this other team, because the other team might view the specific prospect they're getting back from another team as a different like caliber of player than even who the media has ranked higher. It's just every team's viewing players differently to fit their organization and what they like and look for in players. So it's really hard to kind of compare the prospects across organizations, but I do think there is somewhat of a tax just from like the perspective of teams are going to ask for the great players in a really stacked farm system.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great point. First of all, that not everybody views every system the same way, but Nastrini in particular, I bet is kind of a polarizing prospect because of the command issues that I'm sure some organizations are way more concerned about, worried about than others. But so just something to keep an eye on there. Oh, sorry, we got a little sound echo going on, so we'll try and work on that here. Let's get to some of the other trades. Real quick here. Let's see. Let's get to some of the rumors that the Dodgers have been linked in. Nolan Arenado, that deal is dead. Blake, I'll come to you first. The Arenado one is hilarious to me because the saga, if you weren't sort of following this, is that Arenado gets linked to the Dodgers. The LA Times reports it. David Vassay confirms it. And then all of Cardinals beat writers totally lose their minds. Like this is some like grand conspiracy against the Cardinals. Then slowly it's sort of, they start to walk it back a tad bit. Like, well, if it were possible, but then today the Cardinals come out and say, hey, he's not going anywhere. So just real quick on Arenado. Again, the latest is that it's not going to happen, allegedly. What did you make of kind of that whole thing, Blake?
I mean, I kind of took it as the Dodgers were asking and the Cardinals were listening. And it got to the point where the Dodgers were saying like, hey, we could include these players if you're interested in trying to get a deal done. And the Cardinals kind of considered it. And then ultimately they didn't land on anything. And the Cardinals came out and said, hey, we're not moving him. We were never considering it. But in reality, pretty much every player on every non-contending team is getting discussed at some point. So it's probably more of what we were hearing. I don't know how close they got to any actual deal or anything, but both teams are going to do their due diligence and try and upgrade their team. Like if the Dodgers gave up Bobby Miller and others, I don't think the Cardinals are going to say no. So you have to listen when you're rebuilding, and when you're trying to win a championship, you have to try and make a big move. So That's more of what I just saw it as.
Yeah, I was just found it super interesting. It felt so specific that it was hard for me to believe that the LA Times and David Vassay and all these Dodgers people were making it up. And then, of course, it ends up not happening. So who knows? We'll see how that ends up playing out. But AJ, I imagine you would have been a fan of going after Nolan Arenado.
Yeah, go big or go home, man. Arenado still plays great defense at third. I think he's still graded well anyway. And he's still mashing. Like,
Yeah,
he's still hitting the bejesus out of the ball. And we don't have at least a dedicated third baseman for all the improvements I think Max Muncy has actually made there.
Yeah.
I think when a guy like Arenado is available, if the price is right, you pull the trigger on it for sure.
Yeah. All right. We got another super chat here. Shout out to Laura Lara, one of the old time friends of the show, longtime listener. So we appreciate it. Will the Dodgers add another starter before the deadline, in your opinion? I'll go first. I think they do. I think the Dodgers are going to add someone, and I think it's going to be somebody who's better than Lance Lynn, which most of you would tell me is the lowest bar I could possibly have set. I would argue there is a lower bar, and we've seen some of those players take them out for the Dodgers at some point this season. But I do think there's guys that are out there. We've mentioned Rodriguez. We've mentioned Lorenzen. I think Jack Flaherty is a guy that could be moved. Justin Verlander, who we're going to, we're just about to get to. Basically, the Dodgers have explored that. According to the LA Times, he's a guy they tried to sign for 2 years and $80 million this offseason. So we know that there has been some interest historically, and given the state of things, maybe there would be some more interest. But I'm going to say yes. I think the Dodgers will add another starter before the deadline. And if you're asking me to get specific, I think it's going to be Verlander. I think there's some smoke building on that one. I think the Mets have officially started to sell, and I think the Dodgers might go for it and take Verlander. So that's my answer. AJ, do you think the Dodgers add another starter before the deadline?
I hope so. But
come on, we can't. There's no hopes though. Laura's paying $4.99 to get your opinion, not your hopes.
No, I fully believe someone is coming over and becoming part of our starting rotation. At this point, look, before a few weeks ago, if you had floated the name Justin Verlander to me, I would have screamed at the top of my lungs, no, no, God, please no. At this point, we're running out of options and the desperation is higher. If they can get Verlander for a fair deal, just do it. At this point, he wasn't one of the guys, I don't know, who was doing part of the Bang Bang scandal. Boo him for a few starts and then get over it if he can help us win. At this point, that starting rotation is begging for arms.
Yeah, Matt Moreno in the chat, by the way, said he wants Justin Verlander so that Ben Verlander comes with him. So you can at Matthew__Moreno on Twitter and let him know how you feel about his love for Ben Verlander there. Blake, will the Dodgers add another starter before the deadline, in your opinion?
Yes, because they have to. And if they don't, I think we're all going to look back on this trade deadline and say it was a huge disappointment, and probably the season in general, because they absolutely need starting pitchers, especially if Julio doesn't start to figure it out. If Gonzalez struggles continue, like, you really only have Kershaw you can trust in the rotation right now. And other than that, you're just kind of hoping someone can not be terrible for his start every time out. So, like, the rotation's a mess and they need to get something done, whether that's Verlander or someone else. We'll see. It's been reported they want someone with team control. It wouldn't shock me if they go out and get someone none of us were expecting, kind of like the Alex Wood trade a few years back, where that just kind of came out of nowhere. No one was expecting that. So
hopefully a lot better than Alex Wood.
Alex Wood was solid. Like, he was a solid number 3 or 4 for a few years. Like, if they got that right now, he'd probably be their second best pitcher. Like,
fair.
So regarding Verlander, I don't want him because I don't really like him, like, personally, and of course Ben Verlander is the worst, and I think most of the chats can agree with that. So, although it would be pretty funny to see Ben Verlander have to root for the Dodgers after hating on them for so long, I think that might be worth giving up Cartaya or someone just to see that happen.
Yeah. Well, real quick, we got another super chat. Thank you, Laura, for the super chat. Massimo as well. Jeff, AJ, and Blake, do you think Justin Verlander will waive his no trade clause to come to LA? Will LA be aggressive and grab one more top tier pitcher? I find it impossible to believe that a guy like Verlander would pass on the opportunity to actually be competitive this year. But it would not be the first time I'm wrong. So I would imagine that the no trade clause would not be an issue. I think Verlander's only beef with coming to the Dodgers in the offseason is that the Dodgers were offering deferred money. There weren't any stories that he doesn't like LA or hates the Dodgers or something. So Blake, for me, I find it hard to believe that the no trade clause would be an issue.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I think LA was his preferred city in the offseason, if I remember the reports correctly. I think his wife wanted to be here, and he just ended up going for the money more so in New York. So I think if he had a choice, he would be going to LA or probably back to Houston just because he's familiar with that. So I don't think it would be an issue. Whether the Dodgers make the trade, they might kind of argue with the Mets on the Mets would probably want to eat more money, and the Dodgers would want to give up a lesser prospect and eat more of the money themselves. So might be kind of hard to match up there, but we'll see.
Yeah, but hey, eating money, to Matt's point, eating money, if the Mets can eat some of the money, that might keep open the Shohei Ohtani checkbooks a little bit, even with Verlander's money on the books for the next couple of years. So, I mean, that was the crazy part about the Scherzer trade is Scherzer's contract isn't very good. Scherzer hasn't been very good, but they were able to get a top 50 prospect out of it because of the amount of money they were willing to eat. So, AJ, you in agreement? You think no trade clause wouldn't be an issue here?
Yeah, I think he'll waive the no trade clause. I mean, if you're looking at Houston and Los Angeles, why would you want to go to a humid soup of a city with inferior Mexican food instead of going to a much better city with superior Mexican food? I said it.
There you go. There you go. No complaints there. So
Can we get that one clipped and get everyone mad at AJ on Twitter,
Yeah.
all of Astra's Twitter?
That's how we're going to go viral. We haven't even gotten to the food takes, folks. If you're new around here, the two guys that I'm on the show with have potentially the worst food opinions in the history of the world.
I do
We
not.
usually do food opinions, and let's just say one of these two put Jack in the Box ahead of In-N-Out, and the other guy ordered chicken parm at IHOP. All right. So moving along, let's get to some of these other rumors real quick. We mentioned Verlander, Mark Canha, Tommy Pham. Both options as well. Fabian Ardaya says both remain of interest. We'll do rapid fire here because we're coming up, but want to get some time for questions and stuff. Blake, I'll just ask this one to you. Should the Dodgers still be adding another bat here, or should they be focused entirely and only on the starting pitching market?
I think the starting pitching market should be their main focus. I mean, I wouldn't be opposed to adding Pham or Canha. They're good players and they kind of fit the team. I'm just not sure what their actual role would be. They kind of filled out there. That I felt like that made more sense, if they're trading Taylor and Muncy for Arenado and that kind of report deal. So I don't see it happening, but it makes some sense, I guess, just from the perspective of their good players and could help them win.
Yeah. The other rumor that has sort of circulated, we mentioned Verlander, we mentioned Eduardo Rodriguez. The other one is somebody that's come up a little bit already, and that's Mitch Keller of the Pirates. Blake, you mentioned the Dodgers have said they would through sources, they would like to get somebody who's under team control. They're looking ahead. Julio is a free agent. Kershaw is a free agent. Dustin May is out for a long time. Tony Gonsolin is struggling. The future of the Walker Buehler's coming back from major surgery. The future of the rotation is not maybe what we thought it was going to be 6 or 9 months ago. So Keller's a guy who's got team control through 2025, an ERA of 4, 3.8 FIP in 22 starts. AJ, is that the type of guy? Would you rather the Dodgers pay up for a guy who's got a few years of team control, who's maybe, a tier above some of the other players? I mean, I'm not saying Keller is better than Verlander necessarily, but obviously he's a better option than Lance Lynn, who we've talked about. Would you want the Dodgers to pay up for a guy like that with a few years of team control versus somebody who maybe is an expiring contract?
Yes, I would, honestly, and especially specifically between Verlander and him. For one thing, I don't love Verlander personally either. The other part that we have to address is that even though he has done well in his aging, Verlander is not getting any younger. Father time comes for everyone. Keller was my favorite trade target on that list. So if you're asking me between Keller and some of the other names, I'm probably going to pick Keller unless you're giving me some home run name that I didn't think about.
Blake, I mean, you mentioned, and I agree with you, the Dodgers tend to surprise in this type of market. Is there anybody else out there that you've even heard floated that would be a starting pitcher you'd be interested in that would kind of be the outside of the box team control? I mean, Logan Gilbert of Seattle has been mentioned a little bit, but it feels like they're going to go for it. So who knows?
Yeah, I haven't heard anyone, and I haven't like looked into anyone too specifically. I I don't know. Like Mitch Keller seems to be the obvious target of guys who could be traded and has team control with upside. So he's probably my top target right now too.
Yeah.
But outside of like who we're hearing, I haven't heard anything. Or
Yeah, Brady Singer of the Royals was the other one, but there's skepticism about whether the Royals would move on just because that's the thing with guys with team control. Even if their team sucks, their team might want to hang on to him because he's not a free agent for another 3 or 4 years and they think they could be competitive in the next couple. So we'll see on both of those fronts. Massimo with another super chat. We appreciate it. What do you guys think of the Dodgers bullpen right now? Should LA DFA Grove and Vesia and Almonte if they can't swing a starter and focus on a reliever? This was kind of next on my to-do list. So Massimo, let me get to your question sort of around a long way to get there. And this will be rapid fire as much as we possibly can. I know I've said that phrase a lot and we typically aren't great about being rapid fire, but we'll try this time. With Lance Lynn on board, I think it's a safe bet that he's going to be in the starting rotation for the Dodgers, at least for the next few weeks. When Kershaw comes back 10 days from now, that gives you Kershaw, it gives you Julio, it gives you Lance Lynn, 3 guys that I think are guaranteed spots in the rotation, at least for the next 3 or 4 weeks. Then you've got Tony Gonsolin, you've got Emmett Sheehan, you've got Bobby Miller, Ryan Pepio, who's 3 rehab starts in. Here's my question. Kershaw, Urias, Lance Lynn. Blake, give me the 2 guys who are in the rotation with those 3.
as of right now, I'll say Gonsolin and Miller. I think Gonsolin's a lock unless he's hurt, but I still think they make another trade for someone, and it'll probably be Gonsolin and whoever they make a trade for.
Okay. AJ, you agree? So you said Gonsolin and Miller. You agree with that, AJ? Is that who you think the number 4 and 5 starter would be?
Yeah, 100%. And I think, yeah, and if they do, it'll be Gonsolin and whoever they trade for, even though maybe if you're looking at playoff rotation, Miller may have the more upside, but
yeah,
I don't think Blake's wrong.
Yeah. I was so waiting for Blake to just fire off his Tony Gonsolin take there, but he tamed himself, so I appreciate it.
I mean, it's what I think they're doing, not what they should do.
Fair.
Exactly.
So here's why I wanted to preface that to get to Massimo's question. So you've got Phillips, Gratterall, Ferguson, Almonte, Brazier, and Kelly, who I think are locks for the playoff rotation or the playoff bullpen, or the bullpen, I should say, right now. Okay. And I know he's got Almonte on this list. Massimo, he had been scoreless in like 16 straight appearances before giving up 3 runs. I know he was atrocious the other night, but like he's at worst a middle rotation, middle reliever. At best, he's a back end reliever. So I think Almonte's safe. So again, that's Phillips, Gratterall, Ferguson, Almonte, Brazier, and Kelly. That's 6. So now we've got 2 bullpen spots left. 4, Vesia, Grove, Sheehan. If they do make another trade, then Bobby Miller's in that group. Ryan Pepio's in that group. So of those 5 guys I just mentioned, Grove, Sheehan, Vesia, Miller, and Pepio, AJ, I'll start with you. Which 2 guys do you think get spots in the bullpen?
I mean, I really like what I've seen from Sheehan.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure. I really don't. I don't have a strong opinion on that because my problem is the unpredictability of the way the Dodgers sort of velvet glove their young arms. I don't see a guy like Sheehan necessarily sitting in that bullpen unless they're really confident that he's physically able to handle the workload. I think you're going to look at probably the old faithful guys like the Vesias and Almontes because especially Almonte, he's been very good recently. With Vesia, he's been a kind of a house of cards, but when he's good, he's very effective.
Okay, Blake, I see that we've got some interesting, I don't want to say breaking news, but an interesting report from Ken Rosenthal related to the Dodgers we're going to get to, but I want to finish off this question real quick. Phillips, Gratterall, Ferguson, Almonte, Brazier, Kelly. I've got those 6 as locks for the Dodgers bullpen. Do you agree?
Probably.
Okay, so if that's the case, out of Vesia, who would be, they only have 1 lefty of the 6 right now. Vesia, Grove, Sheehan, Bobby Miller, Ryan Pepio. If you had to pick 2 from that group to be in the bullpen, who are you picking?
I think Vesia is also a lock right now just because of his past and how their bullpen is set up. He's also been pitching better recently. And then probably Sheehan just because I like his fastball a lot and how that could play up out of the bullpen. I think they might prefer Grove out of the bullpen right now just because like he has more experience there and he has a few pitches he could work with and he's kind of interesting as a target there. But I'll definitely say Vesia and one of those two.
Okay, well, let's get to the Ken Rosenthal report because it's an interesting one. Well, let's do this. Scott just dropped us a super chat. So, Scott, we're going to answer this, and then we'll get to the Ken Rosenthal report. Keller and Bednar for Cartaya, Bush, Stone, and Pepio. That's quite the price. But you're getting a pitcher with a few years of team control. Bednar, am I right in remembering that Bednar has some team control as well?
Yeah, I think he has 3 or 4.
Extension. Yeah. But you're trading Cartaya, who's probably the number 2 prospect in the system, Bush, who is expendable, Stone, and Pepio, guys that are on the way out. So it's an interesting package. So Blake, real quick, would you say yes to this trade?
It's tough. It feels like a lot at first glance, but that might be what it costs. I'm not sure if I'm comfortable making that deal, so I feel like I'm going to take the Scott route here and just say, like, I don't know.
Gosh.
But if I have to absolutely say one, I'm going to say no, just because they could probably do a little better with that package, but it probably is fair considering this market.
Are Stone and Pepio, is one of those 2 guys sort of the deal breaker to you? Like, do you want to lessen one of those two prospects?
It's just the whole thing together. Like, I don't know if I'd trade all 4 of those guys for 2 of those guys. Like, maybe 3 and I'm more on board, or take out Bush or Stone and put in 2 other guys that are a little lower ranked. It just feels like a lot. So that's why I'm saying it's probably fair, but I just don't think I could end up actually pulling the trigger just because of the total upside you're giving up.
I know why Scott's asking this because Cartaya, Stone, and Pepio have probably seen their stock drop as much as any Dodger prospects this year, and we all know how the Dodgers feel about Bush, which is why I think it makes it interesting. AJ, would you say yes to this?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because as a Dodger fan, that's a heavy heart of a sentence to read, Cartaya, Bush, Stone, Pepio. But if I'm trying to be objective, probably a fair trade.
Yeah, it feels a tad like I said, I think Stone and Pepio, it feels like giving up both those guys. It feels like where I'm slightly uncomfortable, but that's the cost of doing business right now. So there you go. Thanks again for the super chat there, Scott. Let's get to the Ken Rosenthal report. Blake, he just released an article while we've been doing this show. I know you got a chance to maybe take a look at it. It's entitled "What I'm Hearing Heading into the Deadline," and it basically says, quote, "The buzz around the Dodgers and Verlander among scouts is growing louder. The match seems obvious, even though the Dodgers likely would be uncomfortable with his conditional option that guarantees him $35 million in 2025, based on how many innings he pitches next year. But Cohen paid $36 million to extract a top 100 prospect out of the Rangers for Scherzer. Surely he can figure out a way to do it for Verlander too, if Verlander is willing." Give me your rapid thoughts on that.
I mean, if the Mets are eating a ton of money, like, it makes a lot of sense for the Dodgers. You could maybe entice them with a Michael Bush type. They'd probably want another starting pitcher back in it too, and they might even prefer that to Michael Bush. So maybe you get a Stone for Verlander kind of swap there, and I wouldn't hate it. It seems like it would be a bit of an overpay, but I feel like that's the kind of move you can live with at this trade deadline when you're trying to win a World Series. Like, I prefer to give up a good prospect for a good player rather than give up a good prospect for Lance Lynn, which is something I already said. So sure, if that's what it takes, go for it.
AJ, your thoughts?
I'll make it quick. Yes, but only if the Mets eat up a lot of the money.
Okay. Here's another interesting nugget, and a couple people in the chat have picked up on this. The other interesting nugget from Rosenthal was that the White Sox are listening on Dylan Cease. So another guy that the Dodgers at one point had been talking about, had been linked to. The White Sox are listening on Dylan Cease and everyone else on their roster. Cease, I don't know. I'll just throw it over to you, Blake. The thoughts on that Dylan Cease might still be available?
He would be my top target if he is available. I don't think he's actually going to get moved. I feel like it's just the White Sox saying like, hey, if you want to give us Cartaya, Bobby Miller, and someone else for Cease, we're not going to say no. Like they're
Yeah.
doing their job and listening. You kind of have to. But I realistically don't think he's going to be moved. But hey, if the Dodgers want to go crazy, get Luis Robert and Dylan Cease or something, like, sure, cut the farm for those guys.
Yeah. It does say the perception among many in the industry is that Cease and center fielder Luis Robert remain all but untouchable, but some rival executives see the White Sox willingness to entertain offers as an opening, however small. AJ, Dylan Cease, would he be? I saw you rubbing your hands together. Would he top all of the options that we've talked about so far?
He's been my number one trade name since the beginning of the season.
Okay. There we go. There we go. Massimo with another trade offer for us. I like these. Verlander, Canna, and Pham for Grove, Bush, and Barnes. I'm not sure that's enough to get those three players, but if it were, I don't think any of us would be saying no to that. Do the Dodgers have to eat Austin Barnes' salary next year as well? Is that part of the salary dump here? Yeah, this doesn't feel like enough unless the Mets are sending no money with this package, right, Blake?
Yeah, if they want a salary dump Verlander, I think that package probably gets it done. But I don't think the Mets are going to want to do that. Steve Cohen already said like he sees the cost of signing those guys as a sunk cost already, so he'd rather just eat the money and get good talent back in the future. So I don't really see that happening.
AJ, I see some of this in the chat. Pham is not a popular player among Dodger fans. We'll put it that way. Verlander. I mean, we're talking about all the unpopular guys tonight, I guess. Any issue with the idea of bringing Pham to the Dodgers?
Don't let him join the fantasy football team.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's going to be bad blood. All the guys are going to have Jock Peterson's back. And what was the report that they got into that Pham hit him, punched him, or something like that in the outfield because of what he believed to be a sketchy trade? Is that right, Blake?
I think he slapped him or something
Oh,
like that.
him.
But yeah,
beautiful. Gotta love that.
I will say
right.
though, Pham's a really good player. He's having a great year. Like, I think the Dodgers could handle one guy that isn't the most popular in the clubhouse to add the talent. I don't think it's a need at this point, but like, he's good. So
Okay. Well, there you go. Well, let's get to some more questions. If you've got any questions, throw them in the chat. We'll hang around for about 5 more minutes and answer those. All caps questions followed by your question. I said, if you want to throw food questions, Blake and AJ are the target market here. If you want to get something spicy out there, nothing I said earlier is a lie. So all caps questions, and then throw your question right after that. We'll get to some. David wants to know, are we all in this year, or are the Dodgers just playing out the season so we can get Ohtani next year? I think you can be both, kind of. Like, I think you can go and get guys and be competitive this year without taking on salary. But that's kind of where the Verlander thing comes to the front. AJ, your thoughts?
Yeah, both. Do it.
Okay. Blake?
I'd say they're kind of punting this year. I've said it already. Like, their focus is on next year getting Ohtani. Like, their offseason moves were JD, Noah Syndergaard, David Peralta, and I think I'm forgetting. Did I say Rojas? Like, they didn't do much.
Did you say best moves? Best offseason
No,
moves?
like those were the moves they made.
Oh.
Like, so like they kind of showed they weren't focusing as much on this year from the beginning. And then for their trades, they got Ahmed Rosario, Kike Hernandez, Lance Lynn, and Joe Kelly. Like, they're trying to win cheaply, and I think we're kind of seeing the results of that.
Massimo with another question here. What should LA do about their backup catcher role? This is the softball question. They should DFA Austin Barnes yesterday and call up Hunter Fiducia, who's got like a 1,000 OPS down at AAA, and let him rake, Blake.
I would say the opposite. Like, they're going to keep Austin Barnes. I don't think they're moving on from him. If they're getting someone as a throw-in at a trade, maybe. But like, the backup catcher role isn't a priority. He's going to play once or twice a week. And then once you get into the postseason, he's not going to play at all. So it just doesn't matter. Focus on a starting pitcher who's going to make an impact in the postseason. And Barnes is loved in the clubhouse. Like, he's basically another coach that they have. Like, his value isn't on the field. He's another coach.
Let him coach. Hey, can we pay him $3.5 million next year to be our bench coach? Maybe. We'll see. AJ, Massimo did say, what should LA do about their backup catcher role? To be fair here,
I mean, they should take him off the active roster and bring up Hunter Fiducia or cardboard cutout. But they won't. They absolutely won't.
No chance they do. To be clear, I agree with that. All right. Let's see. This is a good food question. Ivy wants to know if you could pick another food deal besides a free jumbo jack for 10 strikeouts. Although AJ might go for the jumbo jack, to be determined here. Big Jack in the Box guy over there. What would it be? I remember there used to be a deal. I think it was, I don't know if they scored 6 runs or if they scored 10 runs, but you got 6 free wings from Hooters. That was my favorite. That was my favorite Dodgers giveaway that they ever did. I was like a high school kid and thought it was the funniest thing in the world. And me and all my buddies were at a game and it was the best. So I don't know. Can we get buffalo wings from Hooters? Is that still a thing? That's my answer. Blake?
Yeah,
You want pancakes?
Jeff, this is a family show. One of the comments there. No, I'm not going to take pancakes. Maybe some tacos from somewhere. I don't know where.
Well,
If I say Taco Bell, like that's
Oh, there we
obvious
go.
one, but people are going to laugh. How about an In-N-Out burger? Like there's a
Oh.
good one.
Okay, so he said crunchy tacos from Taco Bell. AJ, your answer?
First of all, I don't like jumbo jacks. Never have. Secondly, In-N-Out would be my first choice, but I feel like they don't commonly do partnerships like that. Dude, give me that double Western from Carl's Jr.
Okay. No, that's a great choice. That's a great choice. Another super chat here. Finnegan Nats plus Verlander Mets. So we've been all in the Verlander. Finnegan from the Nats. Blake, that moved the needle for you at all?
I mean, he's a reliever, and I think you all know my answer on relievers. I think he has good stuff. I haven't looked up his stats or anything this year, but I think he's a talented arm, and maybe there's some upside the Dodgers could unlock there if he's struggling. But I don't know. Like that's just off the top of my head from what I've seen in previous years from him.
Yeah.
So
Kyle,
I wouldn't
Kyle
hate it.
Finnegan, 30, almost 32-year-old, 3.07 ERA this year. The expected ERA and numbers like that are not favorable to him. 4.5 ERA, expected ERA. Again, like I just think when you look at the bullpen, if it's not going to be a guy who's like 8th inning or later, I just don't think it's really going to move the needle because I really do believe Bobby Miller, Emmett Sheehan, Michael Grove, Ryan Pepio, like those guys, 2 or 3 of those guys are going to be impact arms once they get moved to the bullpen and say, hey, Bobby Miller, just go throw 101 miles an hour and get us like 6 outs as an opener or whatever. Like, I think that's what they're going to do. And then followed up with Sheehan. And I think so. I don't know if Finnegan is a better option than the guys they have at the bottom of the bullpen right now would be my only beef there. So let's see. Let's get to some more questions here. Jonathan wants to know, how can we punt on the season with Betts and Freddie Freeman aging? To be clear, Jonathan, none of us, even if we think the Dodgers are punting, which not all of us do, to be clear, some of us do, not all of us do. But even if they were, none of us would be agreeing with the idea to punt. We would all be, if it were true that they were punting, we would all be mad about it. And mostly for the reasons that you're referencing here. The Dodgers are very good. They have lots of talent on the roster. It's just a few moves around the edges that I think are the difference between this team being, the 4th best team in baseball and the 1st or 2nd. So AJ, go ahead.
I don't think they're punting. I think the more fair equivalent metaphor here is they're down by a touchdown and they're going for the onside kick. They didn't put enough effort perhaps into the offseason to win the game, to win the season. But they're going for that onside kick now by making a few trades and trying to mediocre their way into a 95-win season, which they're not going to get to. But as we've seen in the past, anybody who makes it to the playoff picture has a shot.
Yeah. I do want to applaud Prone to Thrill. The best promo he said was Krispy Kreme donuts. And I agree. That was actually another great promo. The Dodgers used to give out a 6-pack of Krispy Kreme donuts. That might have been for a shutout. I forget what the exact details here were, but there were some good ones here. Blake Deuce wants to know, how's the veal scallopini at IHOP?
I've never had veal anywhere, so I can't answer that.
Okay. Perfect. Good to know. Good to know. It was Matt that was saying that this is a family show. He didn't like my the Hooters one there, I guess. Okay, let's see if we get one more. Do we have any more questions in here? Am I old? This is a good one. Not some positive one. What happened to playback? We've pressed pause on playback just for the time being. We're planning on rebooting it once we get closer to the season. With the summer and that kind of thing, the turnouts haven't been super awesome. And so we're still going to be doing post-game shows on Tuesdays and Fridays, but no playback for the time being. But stay tuned to that because we will be doing playbacks as once we get to the stretch run, that kind of thing. All right, we get some super chats firing in, boys. Hope you got some caffeine. We got a few more minutes in front of us. Massimo again, Snell and Hader for Grove, Stone, Bush, and DeLuca, or we shift a trade for Jeimer Candelario if we can't swing a starter. Who would you trade for these guys? Oh man, I'd have to plug my nose to get Blake Snell. I mean, Josh Hader, I don't hate. He would fill a whole heck of a lot of needs, and he's really good. And I think of him more as a Brewer than I do a Padre. Blake Snell would be tough for me. So that would be, I mean, Candelario was kind of to some degree the argument that I was making with Arenado was like, if you can't go out and get elite starting pitching, then just make your lineup as nasty as humanly possible and try to win 10-9 every single game. But AJ, I'll let you go first. Snell and Hader for that package. Do you want Candelario from the Nationals? Where are you at?
I think Candelario is more likely. In no universe, even on MLB The Show, AJ, the ghost of AJ Preller, would absolutely not make a trade like that with their division rival, with their quote unquote division rival.
Blake, are you in the same boat?
Yeah, I don't think they would trade those guys to the Dodgers. Maybe one of them if it's an overpay. I can't see both. My question with Candelario is where would he play? I don't think they're going to bench Muncy. And
Muncy can play second. Mookie can play short. Bada bing, bada boom. We got this thing dialed, Blake.
Yeah, I just don't see them doing that for Candelario, even though he's good. I think he's more likely to go somewhere with a bigger need for a bat.
Okay, there we go. LMA has one. Why overpay for Verlander when you can overpay for Cease instead? And if we don't trade Bush, this deadline is a failure. He's good, but no room for him. The two pieces here. First of all, I think that's the Joe Burrow turned into a female picture as the profile picture, in which case that's fantastic. So shout out to that. Second of all, sorry, just had to say that out loud. I think we all agree that if the cost were the same, we would definitely rather have Cease than Verlander. I think Verlander would not cost very much prospect-wise unless there was a ton of money coming back with him. So I think there is a slight difference between those two in that way, but we all are in agreement that we would rather give up a much larger prospect package for Cease than we would to acquire Verlander, right? Is that AJ and Blake? We're all on the same page there.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think when you're looking at Verlander, you're trying to give up one top 100 prospect, and when you're looking at Cease, you're talking 3 to 4 plus some flyers. So it's a pretty big difference.
Yeah, and if I'm giving up a top 100 guy for Verlander, there better be a lot of money coming back with him because the Dodgers could have just signed him to that contract and chose not to. The second piece of this question, though, I think is really interesting. If we don't trade Bush at the deadline, it's a failure. He's good, but no room for him. It does feel like, I don't want to say it's a failure because you don't just trade him for the sake of trading him, but it does feel like the way that the Dodgers have handled him, AJ, all the way throughout this season, it would be incredibly weird to me if they did all of that and he was still on the roster past August 1st.
Yeah. I mean, we've made this joke for months now that he's been window shopped by the Dodgers all season because every time they send him back to AAA, all he does is mash and earn his way back to the roster. Yeah. And every time they bring him back, they give him a few pinch hits. He might get a start or two, but not the playing time that it seems like he's earned. Yeah. And I don't know if they're doing that just to kind of not tank his trade value in case he goes 0 for 30 or something. So I can't imagine why they're still keeping him unless he's looking to be in a trade package. And if not, then bring him up. We could use a bat.
Blake, let me ask you this question. Give me a percentage chance that Michael Bush is still in the Dodgers organization on opening day 2024.
20? Can 50? I go right down the middle and say 50? Yeah. Well, it's either they trade him or they don't. So but I guess my realistic answer is 35%.
Okay.
If you held him now, he could be your DH next year if they miss out on Ohtani. So I don't think it would be the worst thing in the world to hold them for a little while longer. You can always trade them in the offseason when more deals tend to get done and more teams are more reasonable about costs.
Yeah.
So if they just don't match up on a trade right now, I don't think it's the end of the world. You can maybe call him up and see what he has this year, or just hold on to him and see what you can do in the offseason, or just give him a chance to play next year.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree. I was going to say even, 20, 25%, because it feels like if they can't get anything done under the pressure of the trade deadline now, the idea of the whole offseason having an opportunity to move him feels like the type of thing that could be a fit. So there you go. We had one last question, and I think this is a good one. Ella Shiva asked, and we'll close with this. Will the Giants win the division, AJ? Yes or no?
No.
Blake?
No, but it's not impossible.
Blake, who do you think wins the NL West?
Right now, the Dodgers, because they're favored, but we'll see what they do with their pitching. Like, if they continue with this 6 ERA every night pitching staff, like, talk to me after the trade deadline and we'll see.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Hey, speaking of the trade deadline, Tuesday is the trade deadline. We will have a huge action-packed show right here on the Dodger Blue 1958 YouTube page. That'll start around 2:15 Pacific Coast time and go past the trade deadline, which is at 3. We'll probably wrap up around 3:30 or so. Justin Lorber, future Dodgers, the top prospect guy, my favorite prospect guy on the Dodgers side out there, is going to be joining us for the back half of that show. I think Daniel Starkin at least will be in. We'll see some of these guys might be able to hop on. So it's going to be a good show. So make sure you join us for that. We'll be breaking down stuff. Of course, if something happens between now and then, we'll be doing a live show breaking that down as well. So maybe we get a Justin Verlander story, or maybe even a trade on Monday, something to break down. We shall see. Make sure you check us out. If you're listening on the podcast, thank you very much. If not, if you are a podcast person, please subscribe. Apple, Spotify, Google, wherever you get your podcasts, search for Dodger Heads. We'd greatly appreciate that. We've been putting out a ton of content of late. And I want to say thank you to the folks that are joining us that might be new. We put out 3 of the 5 biggest shows we've ever done in the past 5 or 6 days. So thank you to you all for joining us. This is our biggest Sunday night show we've ever done. So clearly folks are fired up at the trade deadline. I was afraid after 9-0 tonight, we might have a dead show. Instead, we had the exact opposite. So thank you all for joining us. We appreciate you being along for the ride with us here on the Dodger Blue 1958 channel. Of course, check out DodgerBlue.com and Dodger Blue 1958 on social media everywhere as well. That is AJ Gonzalez and Blake Williams. My name is Jeff Spiegel. We appreciate you for joining us. Enjoy the rest of your night. If you're listening this tomorrow, enjoy the rest of your day. But either way, go Dodgers.